St. Elmo's Fire, so I wasn't really sure what to make this video about. Pastor Chris promised that I would put a video up today, and I've really just been stalling all night because I couldn't think of anything that I really wanted to talk about or anything I really wanted to respond to. Eventually it got to a point where I felt like I had to pick one of the ideas and just go for it, even though I wouldn't enjoy it, because I needed to do something. And that got me thinking about NaNoWriMo 2013. So I'm sure you've all had the experience of reading a book, and there's a character who you just hate them. You really hate them, and you hope something terrible happens to them, and you keep reading, but you just hate them. Well, for NaNoWriMo 2013, I got to write one of those characters, and I hated him the whole time. I just hated him so much. And every time I would go and start to work on the story, I was writing it purely out of spite. Like, I needed to finish it, even though I no longer liked the idea or the character or just anything about it. This was after winning in 2011 and 2012, so I wasn't willing to go back to not finishing. And so I came up with an idea. The entire novel was based off of the title idea that I came up with before November, which was Results Not Typical. I thought it was a great title for a book, and I just tried to think of anything I could use it for. It turned into a story about a guy named Richard Aiken, who went by the name Abe because his first name was otherwise literally Dick. It's surprisingly fitting. Abe had a friend who worked in medical trials, and the friend allowed him to game the system. See, he would come in, pretend to have whatever illness they were treating with that experimental drug, and his friend would rig it so that he always got the placebo. A lot of these studies were paid, so Abe was actually making a living off of false drug trials. I did zero research to see if this was a plausible scenario at all. I really hope it's not, but it seemed like a fun concept, and I ran with it just to see what would happen. I was maybe 15,000 words in, everything was going about how I'd expected. Abe was a jerk, but that was, he was scamming medical trials, it's kind of what you expected, and other characters were getting introduced, and it seemed to be going fine, and then it just wasn't anymore. And Abe was still a jerk, and the other characters were beginning to resent him, and he wasn't learning from it, and I just really stopped liking the idea, and I was like, this is going nowhere. Oh god, why did I think writing 50,000 words based off of a title was a good idea? No. But I wasn't gonna lose, so I stuck with that asshole for another 35,000 words. I finished the story, I closed my laptop, and I swore never to look at it again. Okay, maybe that's being a bit dramatic, but I did need some space for that story for a while. I didn't enjoy anything about the last half of working on that novel. It wasn't fun at all. I was not enjoying what I was writing. I wasn't enjoying where the story was going. I was really only doing it because I didn't want to lose after 2 years of wins. And I still pretty much hate the story. It's never going to be reworked into something, and I'm fine with that. It was a failed experiment, and it's over now. And yet, even though I hated the character and I hated the story, there are a handful of scenes that I still just can look over and legitimately think are awesome, and I'm happy about those. I was really pleased with the dive bar that they went to. They called it the Trifecta because it had been shut down by the health inspectors 3 separate times, and it always came back with a different name before getting shut down again. There was also a scene that was really fun to write where, so later in the story, he's no longer able to get the guaranteed placebo drug, and he takes the real drug, it turns out, and has just some very psychotic reactions to it. And he's holed up in his apartment with his couch flipped up, and he's hiding behind it, and the friend comes in to check on him, and he believes the friend is a demon and is just throwing stuff like his remote control and random things at him and screaming and calling him the devil. That was actually really fun to write. So even though it's an objectively bad story, there are some things that could be redeemed and, I don't know, maybe repurposed in something else. But I'm glad that I fought my way through that story. I'm glad that I didn't quit, even though I knew it wasn't going to be something that I would want to look back on afterwards. It was a really helpful thing to know that you could keep pushing down this road that you knew wasn't going to get anywhere, because you still might get something out of it. And that's especially true for something like writing, where you can use bits and pieces and other things. Less true for video, because it's hard to just drop a clip into something else and make it seamless. But it made me think that maybe there are very few 100% bad ideas. Maybe there are some ideas that are not as good as they should be, and some ideas that are just destined to fail, but there's probably not that many genuine, I'm 100% filled with regret about every little bit of this. Okay, I was looking for a good example of how this character was a terrible person, but instead I'm going to end the video on a line that I think was inspired by Kettle when she was living in Minnesota. I live in an apartment that we refer to affectionately as the boxcar. It's somewhere between embarrassingly and adorably small, cramming in just enough to meet the legal definition of a permanent residence in a Tetris-like display of efficiency. See ya.